This is going to be a discussion in which Tim is going to be showing on the whiteboard, but this will be the discussion. Okay, listening up, folks. This is just getting you to the point where we actually have to consider how we're going to structure this particular database. This database is going to be about house and sports day events. And what we have to do is, first of all, consider that we've got staff, house and students as entities in the system. And then we have to work out what's going to be the relationship between them. Tim's put up for us already staff, and he together with me and now together with you, we've identified that staff will have a primary key of staff ID. House, we're going to do house ID, it's just, and then we're going to have the house name. It's just a little bit more efficient to do it that way. It probably wouldn't be too bad just leaving it as house name as a primary key. But for the moment, we're going to have house ID as the primary key. I need you all to pay attention to this because this is very important. One of the normalization rules says this, that every field in a source table has to be, has to directly relate to that entity. Now, here, with one exception, and the exception is the foreign key that you're trying to build a relationship to. Now, we've identified that house has got a house ID as a primary key. House ID doesn't make up who the staff is. Okay, so I can be Lowe now, and I can be Jeff Cott next year, etc. So the house doesn't make me who I am. So house ID under that normalization rule should not be within staff, but it has to be there so we can build a relationship between staff and house. We have to now ask ourselves this: what's the relationship between staff and house? Can a staff have more than one house? No. And can a house have more than one staff? The answer is yes. It's a one-to-many. So it's a one-to-many from the house ID to the house ID. So can you do that for me? To build the relationship, you go from the primary key field to the foreign key. That's what we call the foreign key, and it's a one from the source table and a many there. Now you can actually put a capital M or an infinity sign to represent many. Likewise, when we go from house to students, it's the same sort of idea. A house can have many students, but any one time a student can only have one house. Yes, next year you might be allowed to move, etc., but at any one time you're not allowed to have more than one house. So we need to put in students a foreign key, and that foreign key is going to be house ID, like we did in staff. And we're going to build a one-to-many relationship from house to students. Now, for this particular database, we're now going to link students to events for sports day. And all this is going to be is determining which students are in which events. So it's not going to be a really high-end database because that becomes very, very complex. All we're doing is we're building a database for staff to determine who's actually going to be in an event on the day. So we're going to have events there and event name. Yep. And the way Tim's done that with a capital E and capital N with no space, I actually prefer to do it that way. Event name is going to be the key field. Now we ask ourselves this: can a student be involved in more than one event? In other words, can you be in 100 metres and 200 metres and 400 metres? The answer is yes. Can an event have more than one student? The answer is yes. So that's a many-to-many. Now here's the rule. To resolve a many-to-many, we now put a table in the middle there. This is what we call a transaction table or a junction table. And it's going to be, we have to put the key fields from both of those, so event name, and stud ID. They have to be made in a combined key field. Remember this as a hint. If you're going to write a hint, write this as a hint. In your transaction table, there should be at least two manys. We always build the one from the source to the many to the transaction table. Let's give a name to that table. We could call it student events, or we could call it roster, because it's a roster of who's you know. So I'm going to call that roster. But if you called it student events, that would be fine. And we're now going to build a many to many from event name to event name. Sorry, one to many. So that goes one to many and one to many. That way to student ID. And if this was your database for the assignment, that with a little bit of discussion has now given you 5 marks. Okay? In a relationship diagram, all you have to do is show the fields and the tables and the related fields. You do not have to show every single field in that table. For example, in staff, there might be 5 or 6 different fields in there, but that's all you have to show. The foreign keys and the related and the primary keys and the actual relationships. Okay? In your major assignment, you have to have at least 3 source tables, gentlemen. In there, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 source tables. Minimum, you need to have 3. We've got 4. You need to resolve at least 1 many-to-many. We've done that. So this particular database is on the way of you potentially getting an A. Okay? We've got 4 source tables and we resolve 1 many-to-many. So if you've understood that, then you're on your way. Any questions on that? Can you all write that down now, please? Draw it down somewhere. Take a picture of it. Do something.